And joining me now is the Director of Strategic Analysis Australia and former Deputy Secretary of Strategy in Defence, Peter Jennings. Peter, thanks so much for your time. First of all, let's talk about this audio. We heard there Hamas telling Peter Stefanovic earlier on the program that AI can do anything these days. Does he have a point?
It can even tell the truth, I think, from time to time, Laura. I mean, this audio reminds me very much of the audio that was intercepted after the Russian proxy forces shot down the Malaysian airliner over Ukraine. It has the air of authenticity about it to me. It's something that was released very, very quickly. I think it tells me that Hamas's operational security is breaking down, because obviously they were talking over clear phones, unclassified phones. But I think it's pretty clear evidence, maybe not 100% definitive, but it's pretty clear evidence that this was an Islamic Jihad homemade missile which misfired, and that's backed up with the other data as well.
Let's go through the other evidence that Israel has provided. The second bit is 3 photos that show the area before the blast and the area after the blast. So this first photo, Peter, could we just explain that a little bit and the subsequent photos we've got too?
Well, what we're seeing is what is primarily the car park area of the major hospital. The bomb appears to have landed primarily in a car park. We see a number of cars which have been destroyed. We see a pretty shallow hole that has been dug by the explosion itself. Not a big one, frankly. The precise numbers of casualties, I think, have yet to be demonstrated, but the car park must have had a significant number of people in it for anywhere near the number of casualties to be sustained that have been claimed.
Yeah, so this is where we see the blast and those that car park there, and you're referring to what Hamas has claimed is 471 deaths from this one blast. It's hard to see how this blast...
I think that's unlikely.
Yeah.
That's unlikely to me, Laura. I mean, the damage to the hospital seemed to be minimal. It actually looked very much like the sort of damage that I've seen in Israel some years ago in Sderot, one of the very nearby towns, where you can actually go and see, or you once were able to go and see, a large display of these homemade rockets. They don't do much damage. If you were talking about an Israeli missile which was designed, for example, to dig down into the earth to find one of these so-called several hundred kilometres of Palestinian tunnels, it would have created immense damage. If it had landed on the hospital, as we've seen with other footage of buildings being destroyed, the entire hospital would have collapsed. So what we have here is actually something that, in terms of destructive power, was small. I mean, yes, it may have killed a significant number of people, unfortunately, but they would have to have been out of shelter in the open air in order to be exposed to the blast effects of the explosive, and I would think a fair amount of rocket fuel as well, which hadn't been spent.
Yeah, so it's likely, Peter, that we could be talking about a failed missile, but then a subsequent explosion. That's not beyond the realms of possibility.
No, I think this. I don't think so. Anything as complicated as that. This would have been a homemade missile, which can be very basic indeed. It said, for example, you don't see steel telegraph poles in Gaza because they've all been taken and used to provide the frame for a missile, and one end is packed with explosive and the other has propellant, and that to me is what I think we've seen here. If this was a high technology, large scale missile, one, it would have done more damage. 2, there would be pieces available. You would see pieces of shrapnel now being displayed, and none of that is evident yet. So this was not a large modern military missile from whichever side it came.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a chance that we're not being shown the entire picture, and, there's always a chance that this can be doctored. But on the evidence we have at the moment, look, I want to show you this next slide that has been provided by Israel again, and this shows the number of failed rockets that have fallen inside of Gaza. It's a hell of a lot.
That's very persuasive to me, and in past conflicts we've known more than 30%, more than a third of missiles fired from Gaza have misfired. They've landed in Gaza, and that's because they're backyard homemade missiles. And I think that's what's happening in this situation as well. And we know Israel can track these things, Laura, because of Iron Dome. The capacity they have to shoot these things down midair shows you how accurate they can be in watching where missiles are fired and where they land.
And just this final slide, it shows the Israeli radar system. What are we actually looking at here, Peter?
So this is the core of the Iron Dome technology, which is used to track a missile when it fires from Gaza, predict the trajectory of the missile, and then shoot it down with an Israeli weapon, which actually brings the offensive missile and the Israeli weapon into contact in midair at great speed. It's remarkable technology. But the radar system that is used makes it possible for Israel to see every single missile that's launched out of Gaza. And its intent, of course, is to shoot down most of them. But if a missile misfires and it lands, as this one did, in a hospital car park, well, Israel will be able to see that as well. And I might say the Americans, through separate systems, will also be able to see it, which is why I think Biden was prepared to sort of confidently say, well, this one wasn't from you.
Yeah, that's the clincher, isn't it, really? The absence of, I think, evidence of 471 bodies. I mean, in one blast, if there was one deadly event like that, the scenes would be catastrophic for days, and we just haven't seen that, even, 24 hours on. And for the United States to have, run the ruler over this with its own intelligence, and that to come from the words of the US president, I think is significant. Perhaps others will take it as a grain of salt. But Peter, if I was to play devil's advocate here, Israel is not perfect. It does make mistakes. Not every airstrike is on target. And we've heard from the Palestinian side in the West Bank on this program this morning, the call for an international independent investigator to get in there. That's a fair call, isn't it?
Well, and maybe we'll see it. I mean, I think it might make sense for Israel to call Hamas's bluff. Other than the fact that we know Israel now is focused on doing what it thinks it's necessary for its state survival, and that is to destroy the military and political leadership of Hamas. Hamas, on the other hand, is interested in creating mass outrage in the Arab world, which is how they can take what I think has been a failed launch of their own missile, killing their own people, and they try to turn this into something which gets the Arab street in revolt. Why do they want to do that? Well, because then that broadens the conflict. So, Israel is far from perfect, but they're an open democracy. They investigate their mistakes. And I think on this occasion, the evidence that they put forward is pretty compelling.
Peter Jennings, great to talk to you. See you soon.
Thank you, Laura.